And welcome back to Meeting of the Minds. Today I'm here with the great Dr. Ray Guarendi, author, apologist, psychologist, father of 10, you name it, he's got it, TV show host. Dr. Ray, thank you for joining us.
I don't think you mentioned, Gene, that I was fractions champ of my row in third grade. You didn't mention that.
That's great.
I put that in the bio, and you just skipped right over it.
No, I didn't. I got to take my time more.
Don't let it happen again.
I won't. And it's never too late to start beefing up your own obituary. So keep it going.
Hey, you know, I want to be the advocate for my sainthood, but I want to do it while I'm alive.
That's it. Excellent stuff, Dr. Ray. Oh, you're a big hero of mine. When I was learning more and more about the Catholic faith 5 years ago, I've watched a lot of your DVDs explaining the faith and reason go hand in hand. And especially as a psychology student my whole life, I became a school psychologist. My business with my brother Jeff is in sports psychology. And I said, well, now how do I make sense of all the psychology I learned now that I know the Catholic faith? How does this all fit together? I watched a great YouTube show with you and Father Mitch Pacwa, where you were explaining a lot about that. It must have been Ash Wednesday. You had the ashes going. But again, great to have you. Appreciate it.
It wasn't Ash Wednesday. I think it was July 7th, but I put the ashes on there just to look holy.
That's what I figured. You were too good of a tan for it to be Ash Wednesday.
I almost couldn't see the ashes because I was getting so dark.
That's great. All right, so I got questions basically divided into two categories, parenting and psychology. Let me hit you with some of the parenting questions at first.
Got it.
Okay, so we're in a society now where we've basically been lied to about science, history, and even a lot of times the faith. So how do we, as we're raising our kids, I have one that's 14 months, I have another one that's coming in July, and my brother Jeff has 4 kids. So how do we teach them about the faith? How do we teach them about the world while not undermining their teachers in school? Even at a Catholic school, they've been indoctrinated to the wrong way of thinking, basically. How do we keep that respect for authority and yet teach them?
What most parents miss, do you hear that phone ringing in the background? We forgot to disconnect it.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's going to ring for us. What most parents underestimate is the incredible shaping power of the culture.
Right.
The culture wants to misshape your kids' souls. So when they're little like this, you can screen out a lot. The video stuff, the computer stuff, to some degree, even the kinds of kids they hang around with. You're going to probably have to limit the cultural influence so that your influence is better. And most parents don't. They go with the flow of the culture. If this video game's available and it's popular, well, get it. If you get 27 gifts for your birthday, well, get 27 gifts. Don't ever think of only having 3. In terms of praying, well, he doesn't really want to. He's distracted, you know. So we kind of cut it back to maybe one night a week. You know, I don't want to force it down his throat. So they yield to the culture, and they're good people. But they swim in this culture that says, do it this way. This is how you have to think. And we're entertaining, and we're fun, and we can just assault your child's soul with our ideas. And most parents get overwhelmed by that. One day they look around and they see this 9-year-old and they go, do you know what he told me the other day? Where's he coming from with that? We don't talk like that around here. No, you don't. But you underestimated what does.
Right. I guess one of the big things that when I speak to different parents about, they say, well, there has to be a norm. The kid needs to grow up normal. Now that's always a very skeptical, you know, what exactly does that mean? I think what they're trying to say, they want them to be basically not a social outcast. They could have friends, people of different faiths where maybe they're not, I guess, just being weirdos, basically. They're afraid of the kids not being able to fit in. I guess that's what it is.
And that's one of the number one reasons why parents yield. They allow things they really wouldn't want to allow at this point in their child's 8-year-old life or 12-year-old life, because, well, if I don't allow that, he's going to get resentful. He's going to think, what kind of psycho weirdo did I get for a father? What kind of religious freak show am I into? So what happens is the parents they get skittish, they get nervous. I want my kid to be culturally normal. Yeah, but if culturally normal is bad, then you delay being culturally normal. Parent, Gene, people say things like, well, they're gonna be exposed to it someday. It's all out there. You can't shield them forever. Nobody is trying to shield them forever. We're trying to allow the rope out much slower than the culture says to let the rope out. I'll just give you a small example. Gene, you probably know this. What's the average age of a kid getting a smartphone?
I would think probably around 6th grade.
You're too late.
5th, 4th?
9 and 10.
Wow.
So if you get to 6th grade and your kid doesn't have a smartphone, now you're in a minority. If you get to 14 and your kid doesn't have a smartphone, you're 1%. Smartphones are one of the absolute stupidest, most insane things to do to give to a child. You start to debate it when the child gets older. You don't put a computer in their hand. But what happens is parents try to hold off. No, 10. Oh, that's way too young. No, that's not going to happen. But as time passes and 11, 11 and a half, 12, the kid starts putting pressure. Society starts putting pressure. Well, how's he going to talk to his friends? Who's he gonna relate to? This is how kids do it nowadays, and you got to yield. I don't want to put a computer in the hands of my child. That is idiocy. That's lunacy. And take it from a shrink who's been around a long time, Gene. I've been shrinking longer than you are old. This is one of the, if not the biggest mistake a parent can make who wants to try to raise a virtuous child, is to give them a smartphone way too early. Years too early.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess to put some shoe leather on that, roughly, and I know all kids are a little bit different, but roughly, when should they have their own computer, smartphone, access to the internet? And then once they have access to those things, are there certain blocks or safeguards against bad websites? What would you recommend on the practical side there?
Moral trustworthiness. That is the decision. How morally trustworthy is this child? You know your child. You know across the board how they can be trusted morally. Now, oops, let me stop that. We live in an age of technology. You hear the phone ring, you hear this thing go off. Many parents will say, my child's morally trustworthy, so I really don't have any safeguards on the computer because I think he's 13 years old, she's 13 years old. They're okay. They're not going to do that stuff. And then they get burned. Then they get blindsided because they never thought their kid would do this. It's not because their kid is morally weak. It's because they underestimated the seductive power of that stuff. So first of all, moral trustworthiness. But even at that, trust but verify. 50% of parents have no kind of safeguard whatsoever on a computer or a smartphone. None. The world is the child's playground. Good, bad, threatening, ugly, seductive, immoral, whatever. I tell parents, I don't care how old your child is. I don't care if he's 17. You set up safeguards. You set up passwords on the computer. There are ways that you can link your phone to that child's phone. You could do that so that everything that goes through that child's phone, you see, know where it is. Parents don't do it, Gene. And the sad thing is, a lot of the good parents don't do it either. I cannot tell you how many times parents have come to my office and they're totally thunderstruck by where that child went on that phone.
Yeah. Is there any kind of leniency, I guess, do you cut them where as they get older, you give them some privacy, but not all privacy? Or should it just be, hey, look, this is my phone until you're paying the bills. I can pick it up whenever I want. I have full access to this. Do you come in hard like that? Or yeah.
Well, that's a parent's decision. Many parents will say, what is the psychologically right way to do that? And I'll tell them, there's no psychologically right way to do that. You're the parent. You know your child. You know the kind of rope you want to let out. So I'll give you a small example. My daughter is now 21. Up until the time she was 18, we took 5 phones from her because she misused them. And when we would take the phone, her friends would give her another one. Because of course the friends are saying, gee, your mom and dad are really psychos. How could you not have a phone? Here, take mine. You know, I got an iPhone 27 here. You can have this iPhone 9. Okay. And that's what was happening. But she was all the way up to 18 because she just didn't handle it well. And maybe they don't even go to inappropriate places, but it becomes their world. They immerse themselves in that virtual world, and they're doing this at grandpa's birthday party while everybody's singing happy birthday to grandpa, and they're...
Yeah, it's true. I set a good example as a dad because my entire business is basically on my phone. I have a virtual business, work with teams on Skype and Zoom, work with individuals over the phone, and managing the entire business virtually. We do not have an office. So I have my phone on me pretty much all the time. What barriers can I set up?
You're an adult, Gene. So you have the wherewithal, hopefully the moral development, to say, I can control what I do with this phone. You're not a 15-year-old. And that's the difference. If a kid says to you, yeah, well, look at you, Dad. You're on your phone all the time. Yeah, that's what puts food on the table. Okay. That is not what I immerse myself into because I want to follow all kinds of social media and latest goofy trends. Yeah, one of the things kids do, Gene, is they throw at you this idea that we're equivalent. We're the same. You do it. Well, wait a minute. Okay, I got to live my morals for you. That's the best way to do it. But I have a lot more privileges than you do. And it comes with the age. You've tapped into something, Gene. Parents are bullied. They're bullied by their kids. They're bullied by their cultural pressure. They're bullied by grandma. They're bullied by their relatives. Sometimes they're even bullied by their own spouse, which is your judgment is wrong. You need to yield, even though in your heart of hearts, you realize this is not good for your child. This is too fast. And you get hammered. I tell parents that you gotta have a steel rod that thick through your spine nowadays. This is not a farm in 1880 anymore. This is not Springfield, Ohio, 1882. Okay, this is a culture that says we have loud voices, we have entertaining voices, we have seductive voices, and we want to show your child how to think. And so the parent who says, no, I'm gonna mute your voices because I want my voice to be the strongest one at least for 10 or 12 or 15 years, that parent gets grief.
Yeah. And then how do you deal with it then when the kid has maybe teachers, friends, parents, and now we had the new law that was just passed with everything where now they're going to be told from a young age from people in the establishment, probably even people within the church, sadly, even at a Catholic school. It's like, well, this is how it is nowadays. How do we form the kids and tell them that, well, your teacher's wrong, but at the same time have them still have the respect for the authority?
God says, do it this way, don't do it this way. If he's God, then he knows the best way to do it. And I would tell my kids, if the whole world says to do it this way, but God says that's not a good way to do it, we're going to go with God. And that's where you draw the contrast. You say, oh, yes, we don't parent by consensus. We don't say, oh gosh, 99.92% of people are doing it this way. It's irrelevant to a parent. I always ask parents this in my office, Gene. I'll say, what do you want looking back at you at age 22? What would you hope to be able to say about that child? Would you be content to say, well, given the way kids are turning out nowadays, I'm counting my blessings. He's not on drugs. Parole officer says one of the nicest kids he has. And I tell them, is that what you want? You want a culturally normal kid? They all say no. They all say no. Would you want to look at that child at 22 and say he's 1 in 100? Morals, character, compassion, faith? They all say yes. Then I ask, are you prepared to be a 1 in 100 parent? See, you can't guide yourself by the norm. The norm is not good. in parenting. It's not. Trust me, I've been in this business. They come into my office and they're devastated. They're looking at this 15-year-old and they're saying, I don't know who that is. We didn't raise her that way. Why does she think like this? And I'll say, I know you didn't raise her that way, but you underestimated what did. And they were afraid to set the limits.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. Now that's school. Now, how about around the family? So now our kids will be growing up, family members on both sides, gay couples.
A lot more freedom.
Who's cohabitating, close family members who otherwise, good people, well-meaning people. And now they're around these people at the holidays. People are, they're saying, well, I'm married to this person, a man and a man. How do we keep our kid on the right path, especially when they're seeing it from such a young age? This is a norm for them. They just love each other. So how's that different than mommy and daddy?
You use the same guiding philosophy with all of it. You say, God tells you the best way to live. Here's what he says, but he doesn't force it on anybody. They can choose to live the way they want. And if that's the way they choose to live, and God says, no, don't live that way, then he knows what he's talking about. Okay? So what we're trying to do is to teach you the way God says to do it, because that will give you the most contentment and that'll give you the most moral stability. If somebody else chooses to live completely different, if every one of our family members says, I'm going to do it this way, and you can't question it, okay? I find sometimes, though, Gene, parents like you, young parents, they worry because your kids are going to see the culture all around them at a very early age. Right. And they say, well, gee, how do we let that not seep into our kids so they see that as the norm?
Exactly.
You don't have to. You can use it in your favor. You can say anybody can do what they want. The question is that what God would want? God's not going to force anybody to live a certain way. We believe that God's church is telling us the best way to live, and that's the way we're going to do it. Right. You raised an interesting point earlier. You said something to the effect of, okay, the family looks at you, and you're already kind of the weirdo oddballs. All right, a little too religious, a little too homeschooling, whatever it is you're doing, you're just out of sync with everything else. And it's going to blow up in your face. Your kids are going to rebel. They're going to get resentful. They're going to dump the church. They're going to puke up religion. And it was all because you squashed their individuality. What I've seen is that more often than not, as the kids get older and they're raised in a strong, loving family, at some point, the relatives who thought you were a weirdo oddball and were ruining your kids look at your kids and go, boy, what nice kids you have, Gene. Your kids are just great. One time we got that with our kids. Somebody said that after critiquing us for a long, long time. Then they said, Andrew is such a nice boy. He's really a nice young man. And my wife said she wanted to say, well, which is it? Were we too strict and misguided? Or is Andrew a fine young man? It can't be both. Right. Which is it? And I usually tell people, the kids win them over. The kids win the naysayers over, more often than not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think about family holidays. Basically, we look at, how an Italian family is.
Nine conversations.
You divide the one side of the family into one category, the other side of the family and the other side. And then basically they never do the psychologically correct thing where separate the person from the idea. That's stupid and you're stupid for saying it.
And that is why I keep my mouth shut a lot more, Gene. I have learned that. I quickly size up if anybody is at all interested in hearing my reasoning or my thinking. And I can do that within the first 3 sentences. And then I pull out of it.
Because that's what I was thinking, because a part of you wants to get the truth. Allow the truth to have a voice. Do you say it once out of respect for the truth and then back off of it? Or do you all of a sudden always become the religious fanatic who's always bringing up God and Jesus and morals in the Catholic Church. And how do I, and then, okay, sometimes at a holiday, you could just keep your mouth shut. What happens when there's an irregular marriage that you're invited to, that's someone who's very close to you, a family, a cousin, an uncle that you've been close with your whole life, and now you have to tell them, no, I'm sorry, I can't go to that. How do you recommend having that conversation? I guess that's two things: the holiday table and then the irregular marriages.
I don't try to convince people anymore, Gene. If they're open to it, I'm going to talk about it with them. You know what I'm going to do? The technique that works best. I want to know how you think. So let's say you say to me, it's a woman's decision. She can choose what she wants to do with that baby in her womb. Okay. Is it a baby? Well, we don't know. Well, okay, what point does it become a baby? Well, we haven't established that. Would it be a 6 months pregnancy? I don't know. Well, are babies viable at 6 months? Some of them are. In other words, I just ask them questions. You defend your stance. I'm not going to argue with you about my stance. You defend your stance to me, because immorality is illogical. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
So if you ask them to defend this, for example, if your cousin is married to his male cousin, and the topic comes up with grandma, who loves this kid, understandably. And you say, well, grandma, would that mean then that he could marry 2 women? No. Why not? Why not? Once it's not a man and a woman anymore, what's to stop anything? Oh, I don't know. I never thought about that. And then you just kind of let it go. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just like, you're a shrink. You got to get inside somebody's head. You explain to me how you think that way. I just want to understand it. I don't want to dispute it. I want you out loud to hear yourself defend it. That's the first thing. The irregularity of the marriage, I guess it depends on how irregular it is. For example, guy, girl, the church would be very clear on that. You can't go. That's not even recognized as a marriage in God's eyes, or even in natural eyes. The more gray area.
Divorce, remarriage, the two
yes.
not married in the church.
Yes.
We dealt with all 3 of those last year, Dr. Ray, all 3 of those situations. Go ahead.
I have heard priests come down on both sides, Gene.
Me too.
I've heard him say, well, you really got to weigh the devastation to the relationship. I mean, if it's clear that your brother who is doing this, and you're going to say, hey, I can't go because what you're doing is wrong. And he's saying, I don't believe it's wrong. I haven't been inside a Catholic church for the last 12 years, kind of thing. You decide at what point do you say, okay, I'm going to do what I can to keep the relationship alive so that I'm not so far out there in their eyes. You know as well as I do, Gene, we get accused of being judgmental, even if we don't say a word. They know how we think. So we get accused of thinking a certain way. You're so judgmental. I didn't say anything. I know how you think. Okay. Yeah, and that is now commonplace in families, those kinds of marriages that are kind of all over the board. And these people, go ahead, Gene.
I was just going to say, if we have to decline that because it's that severe, how do you recommend having that conversation? Do you be with them in person? Do you call them up? How do you speak to so now if it's your cousin, you realize not only are you going to offend your cousin, but also your aunt.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
So how do you go about doing that?
Well, you asked 2 questions.
Right.
One question is, how do you go about doing it? And the other question is, how do you go about doing it so they understand it? The second part of the question is almost impossible. Okay. You can explain yourself. You say, I love you very much. But according to my deepest belief systems, for me to attend that and to witness it would be very wrong for me to do that. Now, I will tell you, Gene, my experience has been very, very few people who are getting that explanation will say, okay, I understand and I respect that. You are allowed to have your beliefs just as I'm allowed to have my beliefs. And thank you for being so honest with me. It makes me love you even more. I've never heard that. They immediately take it personal. They immediately accuse. They immediately get angry. which takes us to the second part of the equation. Don't expect to be understood.
Makes sense.
You know, a parent will say to me, my daughter's living with her boyfriend. Now, I don't want them to come to my house. As long as they're going to live together, they're not welcome in my house. Or they want me to go to their house to have dinner. I'm not going to do that. And I'll say, now wait, this is your 20-year-old daughter. She needs to know how I think about this. Did you not raise her? Then you had 20 years of showing her how you think about this. She knows how you think about this. Because you love her doesn't mean you condone what she's doing. Because you treat her pleasantly and with respect and you're nice to her boyfriend doesn't mean you're saying, oh, goody, goody, goody. I think that's just wonderful what you're doing. It doesn't mean that. Now, if she takes it that way, that's her situation. But that's not what you're saying. You know, I have a same-sex attracted son. We love him desperately. And as far as he's concerned, mom and dad totally embrace him. Now, he knows we don't approve of the lifestyle he has chosen. He knows that, okay? And it's not our opinion. We believe there's a God, and we believe God says, here's the opinion, okay? It's not Ray's opinion. But yet at the same time, he's not alienated from us. Not at all. That would be the worst thing, to alienate him. Here's an example I use, Gene. Most of the time when people are wrestling with moral issues, it's below the waist. It's divorce, it's adultery, it's fornication, it's homosexuality, it's masturbation, it's contraception. So I ask folks this. I'll say, okay, so you really struggle to have contact with your daughter who's living with her boyfriend. Well, yes. I mean, there's no repentance there. They're just doing it and they think it's fine. What if your brother absolutely said, I hate Dad's guts. If I could get away with it, I'd kill Dad. But I won't because I can't get away with it and I don't want to go to prison. Is that a serious sin? Yes, it is. That's a very grave sin. Would you alienate your brother because of that sin? Would you say, well, as long as he hates Dad's guts, I'm not going to have anything to do with it? See, we kind of pick and choose the sins that are shun-worthy.
Yeah, oh, that makes sense. Makes sense. Another big topic I wanted to speak with you about. I was really intrigued when you speak a lot of times about a blackout and how to implement that. Is it that you're ignoring the kid while they're blacked out, or you just go about everything and they're just closed off to any type of perks? Well, you explain that. What is a blackout? How is it used? What is it? And what are misconceptions of what it's not?
My profession as a group is really uncomfortable with discipline. They talk about it. They say children need limits, children need rules, but what they see as discipline is very mild and benign. And they assume that when a parent says, say, for example, how old's your older child, Gene?
14 months.
Okay. So let's say in about another 3, 4, 5 months, he's going to spend his first time sitting on the steps or standing in the corner or getting in his playpen because he did something wrong and you put him there. Now, in doing that, most parents can't get cooperation, believe it or not. If they say you need to write a 400-word essay of apology to your grandma for talking, they can't get cooperation. And the experts just assume parents can. They just assume that if you levy a consequence, the kid's going to go, oh, okay, Father, why, thank you. This is good for my moral development, and I do appreciate your wisdom. That's not going to happen. So I had to develop a technique that put authority into parents' hands. Kids will misbehave thousands of times per childhood, and that's the nature of the beast. But when they defy your authority, when you say, please go to your room, when you say, go stand in the corner, when you say, put your head down at the dining room table, when you say, give me your cell phone, and they defy it, they argue, or they come out of the room 26 times, you have to have strong backup. And one of the backups I suggest is immediate blackout. All privileges are shut down, except love, some sorts of food, maybe the bathroom. Everything else is shut down. Money supply is shut down. Privileges are shut down. Stuffed animals are shut down. Favorite shirts shut down. Transportation is shut down. Money supply is shut down. That means he packs his own lunch for school. It's all shut down until you get the consequence that you just legitimately asked for. It wasn't any big deal. You want a 500-word apology. She's not going to do it. Okay, then you're shut down until I get it.
How young do you start implementing this, and does it become more difficult when you have multiple children, especially two that are very close in age within 14, 15 months?
We wouldn't know anybody like that, would we?
Right.
This is how you get cheapy free advice.
My friend.
Yeah. He wrote this question for you. You can start it at about age 3. But the way you do it is you say, when the child won't go to the corner, you say, go to the corner, please, or go sit on the steps, please. You're not allowed to kick over your brother's blocks. Go sit on the steps, please. And he won't. Okay, he throws a fit, he melts down, and he gets up from the step. Everything he asks for. My juice cup, Dad. I'm on a juice cup. No, you don't get your juice cup. You don't get anything, honey. I haven't gotten my steps yet. Well, my stuffed animal. I took it. It's on top of the refrigerator. I didn't get my corner yet. You just sort of remind him, okay, here's the deal. I asked you nicely. I didn't even raise my voice. Go to the corner. You didn't. All right, everything you asked for, I'm going to remind you. You're driving through McDonald's and you're getting a chocolate sundae whiff of nuts. You're getting it. Your wife's getting it. He's watching. And he starts to cry. You say, honey, I didn't get my quarter yet. Works so quickly with little kids.
And you're not necessarily outwardly manifesting anger or yelling, or you're not ignoring them. It's just they don't get any perks.
No, any perks. I love you. I kiss you. I hug you. I talk to you. Any perks. Now, when you have multiple kids, and he's going to do things with these multiple kids, he says, fine. I'll go color with my brother. You can't stop me. Then I tell the parents, okay, let him color. But he's still on blackout. And now the blackout's longer. Because you can make blackout as long as you want. You know the record for blackout in our house?
What is it?
Go ahead, take a guess.
3 days?
You amateur.
I'm just getting started, Dr. Ray. A week? 2 weeks?
What was it for JoJo? It's fuzzy now because she was 13 at the time.
Week? 2 weeks? 3 weeks?
56 days, I think. Here's what happened. She stole money. We caught her, talked it over. We said, JoJo, you're on indefinite blackout because you stole $30 from us. She would have gotten off in about a week or two. Now, the rule on blackout with older kids, no victimization. You can't strut around going, this is so unfair. No. You got to be pleasant. You ain't going to get off blackout. So along about the 2-week mark, she pulled a sneaky stunt. We didn't catch it. But she forgot that we had a whole house security system put in place about 8 years ago. An 8-year-old daughter. Dad, I have some information you might want to know about Joanna.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
And the whole day that we didn't not love her. We hugged her, kissed her, said prayers with her, everything, the whole bit. But JoJo, you got to kind of show us you're ready to kind of recoup this. Now that was a long time. I got to admit, that was huge. She even laughs about it to this day. She's 30 years old and she says, did anybody else break my record, Dad? I said, I don't think, Joe. I think that record's like, that's like Joe DiMaggio. That thing's going to stand forever.
That's the 56-game hit streak.
Yes, it is.
That's great. That's great. I'll end with a practical one for you because I still have so many questions for you. We didn't even hit on psychology and how that goes with how I should be reframing that. But Santa Claus, do you tell your kids there's a Santa Claus or not?
If you do either way, it doesn't really matter in the great scheme of things.
Right.
We chose not to. We chose to emphasize more it's Christ's birthday and Santa Claus is a beautiful story based on Saint Nick. That's fine. Did we get grief? Oh.
That family again.
Yes, we're stealing their childhood is what we're doing.
You've corrupted their innocence.
Yes, I was doing an interview for a paper on some other topic, and somehow the Santa Claus thing came up, and she inserted that in the story, and the tone was, "Do you believe this guy?" Well, we got all kinds of grief. I would never do that to my children. Santa Claus is part of childhood. Santa Claus is a wonderful thing. You know, my most wonderful memories of childhood were Santa Claus. And I always wanted to say
Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yeah.
Your partner, Jacob Marley.
Yeah. I rattled the chains, man. So
and this guy's the child psychologist?
Yes, that's exactly right. So the kids are none the worse for wear. None the worse for wear. By age 6 or 7, they figure it out anyway. They realize you can't get around to that many houses in one night. I don't care how fast you are. But we more or less told them it's a beautiful story. You're not going to get any less gifts. You know, it's not because we dumped Santa Claus that you're getting half the gifts. And they accepted it. It wasn't a big deal, you know. But people have such strong opinions about such little things.
Yeah. That's true. We like you said, we arbitrarily pick what we're going to focus on, and it can't be like that. It has to be. We have to be oriented towards truth. And one of the things you've always said that you kind of alluded to here was that anytime we deny the truth of the Catholic faith, the traditional Catholic faith, there's going to be a breakdown in reasoning because He is the God of truth.
Yeah, so. It's true. Well, we'll get together again some other time, Gene. I think that'd be fine.
I'd love to do it, Dr. Ray. Talk about some psychology. Tell everyone where they could find you, even though they already know that.
drray.com, drray.com. All the books are there, something like 15 books. The most recent one is How to Raise an Upright Child in an Upside Down World, which is all the things you're talking about, standing strong against that culture. So all that stuff is there. By the way, you know, my wife accused me of not being an illiterate person. And I told her, I said, you know, last night in one sitting, I finished a 143-page book. And that is a lot of coloring.
That is a lot of coloring. That's right. Excellent stuff, Dr. Ray. I was hoping when I said, where can people find you, didn't give your address. I was going to have to bleep it out. God bless you, Dr. Ray. Thank you very much for all that you do. I really appreciate your time.
As always, my friend, be well.
You too.
See ya.
Take care.